All right, so we're diving back into the course with lessons 73 and 74.
In lesson 87.
So let's just jump right in and read lesson 73 verbatim.
Okay.
I will there be light. I will use the power of my will today. It is not my will to grope in darkness, fearful of shadows and afraid of things unseen and unreal. Light shall be my guide today. I will follow it where it leads me, and I will look on only what it shows me. This day I will experience the peace of true perception.
So much packed in there.
Yeah.
The idea that really stands out to me is that active commitment to using the power of your will. In our everyday lives, the word will can feel like you're just trying so hard to control things.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you think the Course helps us to understand this idea differently?
I think you're right. It's so easy to think of will as like pushing yourself or trying to force things to go a certain way.
Right. When Lesson 73 talks about using the power of your will, it's not about trying to manipulate things in the world around you with your ego.
Right.
It's more about making a conscious choice inside yourself, aligning your perception with the truth and choosing understanding instead of staying in that darkness of fear and illusion.
So it's not so much about making external things change.
Right.
It's about picking a different way to see things, a clearer state of mind.
And the lesson promises that when you choose to seek light, you'll find that peace of true perception.
I like that.
The way you direct your intention shapes your experience.
We actually got a question from a listener that really digs into this.
Oh, perfect.
They ask, is using the power of my will, basically willpower?
That is such an important question.
Yeah.
Because what the Course calls the power of my will and what we usually think of as willpower are completely different.
I see.
Usually willpower comes from the ego.
Oh, yeah.
It's about striving, controlling, and feeling like you're constantly fighting with yourself.
I can definitely relate to that.
It comes from that desire to get what your ego wants and to try to control the things happening around you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's rooted in the fear of not getting what you want and feeling separate from other people.
Like you're on your own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Course suggests that this approach won't actually bring you lasting peace.
It makes sense. It can be exhausting.
But the power of my will in Lesson 73 is about something totally different.
Right.
It's about aligning yourself with God's will or the guidance of the Holy Spirit.
So instead of forcing things, it's about surrendering to something bigger.
Yes, consciously choosing love and forgiveness and letting go of the need to control everything.
So when Lesson 73 says, I will use the power of my will today, it's an invitation to let go of the ego's messed up way of seeing things and to open myself up to the clarity of Christ's vision, that perception that's based on love and unity.
That's it. It's a shift from trying to manipulate what's outside to transforming what's inside.
I like that.
Willpower is like swimming upstream,
Okay.
but your true will is the current carrying you along.
I see.
The Course really wants us to see the difference between these two ways of using our intention.
That's a helpful way to think about it.
Good. So let's move on to Lesson 74 now. There is no will but God's. I am safe today because there is no will but God's. I can become afraid only when I believe there is another will. I try to attack only when I am afraid, and only when I try to attack can I believe that my eternal safety is threatened. Today I will recognize that all this has not occurred. I am safe because there is no will but God's.
Wow.
The real gem in this lesson for me is that line, I can become afraid only when I believe there is another will.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical idea when you think about it.
It is. It suggests that fear doesn't come from things that happen outside of us,
Right.
but from a belief we have inside.
The belief that there's a will that's separate from God's.
Exactly. And if you truly believe there's only one will, and that will is all about love and what's good for you, then what is there to be afraid of?
It makes you wonder where fear even comes from then.
Well, the Course says fear comes from that idea that there's a will out there that's against you, that wants to hurt you or take something away from you.
Like a competing will.
Yeah. When you identify with your ego and all its desires and insecurities. Right.
You start to think there are other wills out there that could get in your way or threaten what you want.
Okay.
And that creates a feeling of instability and potential conflict.
Which leads to fear.
Exactly. It's like the lesson is saying fear isn't actually real. It's just a sign that you're buying into an illusion.
That makes you feel so much safer in a way.
And that's where recognizing that there's only God's will comes in.
Right.
If there's no other will to fight against, then there's no reason to feel threatened.
And that's why the lesson ends with, I am safe because there is no will but God's.
Exactly. And we actually got another question from a listener who noticed something interesting about these two lessons.
They ask, the previous lesson says, please explain the contradiction in the two sections, where the first lesson says, I will use the power of my will. But this one says, there is no will but God's.
I could see how they could seem confusing.
Yeah, it sounds like the Course is giving us two opposite ideas.
One minute you have your own will and the next you don't.
But it all comes down to how the Course understands the ego and the nature of true will. The Course teaches that the whole idea of a separate ego-driven will is an illusion,
Okay.
and that this illusion is what causes all of our suffering and fear.
So believing you have a will apart from God is the problem.
Yes. When you think you have your own will separate from God's, you try to control your life based on what your ego wants. And that always leads to conflict and anxiety.
Right, because it's like you're always battling against something.
Exactly. But the separate will that we think we have, it's not actually real. It's a misperception.
So when Lesson 73 says, the power of my will, it's not talking about that ego will.
You got it. The power of my will in Lesson 73 is about your true will, which is basically the same as God's will.
So it's not about forcing things, but more like an inner knowing.
Yes. It's your ability to choose love, forgiveness, and truth instead of fear, guilt, and illusion.
Saying, I will use the power of my will is really like saying, I will choose to align my mind with God's will.
Yes,
And the ego's will isn't a real power, it's just a belief in being separate.
exactly. So recognizing that there is no will but God's is how you start to break free from that illusion.
So instead of contradicting each other, these two lessons actually go together.
Right.
They guide you through the process of letting go of that idea of a separate self and embracing the reality of your oneness with God's will.
Exactly. Lesson 73 is about making that active choice for alignment.
And Lesson 74 is about recognizing the ultimate truth, that there's nothing else to align with.
That's it.
It's a pretty powerful connection between the two.
For sure.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
Notice those moments when you feel like you're using all your willpower to try and make something happen. And compare that to the times when you feel like you're being guided by something inside.
I see.
How do the results of those two experiences differ in your life?